Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today here with Campus ESP to talk about um, retention and FERPA management with one of our fantastic customers, the University of West Georgia. I'm Leslie. I'm the Vice President for Customer Success here at Campus ESP and formerly worked in higher ed myself. I worked in student affairs for about 8 years at the University of Missouri. And yes, did do the dreaded PhD program while I was there, but finished it actually just a couple years ago. So it can be done, I promise. And I know Blanke also recently did a degree program, but I will let her introduce herself as well to get things started.
Hi there, I'm Olu Banka. I also go by Banka, last name Taiwo. I'm the Associate Director for Student Solutions in the Momentum Center here at the University of West Georgia, loving our partnership with Campus ESP. Like Leslie mentioned, I did complete my master's in public administration 2 years ago here at West Georgia. All I've kind of known in my big girl job is higher ed. So loving it, thriving in it, surviving it some days. Maybe one day I'll pursue the whole PhD, not quite yet. I'm thriving in just being an MPA girl. So yeah, that's
I
me.
love I love that. Well, thanks so much for being here with us. Really appreciate it. So just a couple of quick logistic things to get things started. So obviously everyone who's in the audience, you're on mute today, but if you do have questions, we have a chat feature available. So just go ahead and jump on in there. If one of us is the one not speaking, the other one will try to answer. And we also have some other team members here who can help respond to questions. And after this, we will send the recording and slide deck and our latest FERPA retention study to everyone, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So yeah, you'll get a recording. So if you have to hop off early, no worries. We'll send it to you. So just a quick intro to Campus ESP in case we have anyone with us today who is not familiar with Campus ESP. We are what we would call a startup kind of, but we have been growing a lot since I joined 6 years ago. We're now at over 400 customers and over 10 million family members across the country utilizing the system at these various institutions. And Campus ESP is essentially a parent and family engagement strategy. So we are a platform that is kind of the all-in-one one-stop shop for parent communication. There's a portal, it sends out emails. We're going to get into more of kind of how it works at UWG later. Our team also has, is on hand to basically help all of our customers. So we implement in about 3 weeks, and you have a dedicated team of support here at Campus ESP, a lot of whom previously worked in the field. So you have a lot of experts here, which we'll also talk a little bit about later. And of course, we know it's just really important with any sort of software you're using to know the results. So we really do a lot to try to keep our customers up to date on how things are going, one of which being that you get a monthly report on the data and the stats from your portal, which is great to just be able to show that consistent ROI and know how things are going so that you can adapt as you go. And of course, we're not going to do like a full Campus ESP demo today. So if you want to learn more, there's a lot of resources on our website. We have a blog posts, library there for any topics you could possibly want to learn more about. And of course, if you're interested, you can sign up to get a demo. So I already did a half of agenda item 1 here, which is just a quick intro to Campus ESP. And then we are also going to, of course, give an overview of UWG and kind of the role that Banka plays on that campus and what her office does to support students and families. She's also going to share about how they chose to work with Campus ESP to support retention. Oops, sorry. Obviously some early results, or not early, some results that they've seen so far. I'm going to do an overview of what our FERPA process is in Campus ESP, specifically how UWG is using it, and then we'll just wrap up with questions. So yeah, we will dive right in, as I mentioned, with a little bit of an overview of UWG, University of West Georgia. So, Banka, if you're ready, just go right ahead and share with the class here.
Alrighty, so West Georgia, we're located in Carrollton, Georgia. We're a pretty mid-sized institution. We are now D1 as of July 1st, so gotta shout out my school for that. Again, with the mid-sized institution, we have about 11,000, close to 12,000 students. That's increasing now with our D1 status. We're seeing more and more students learning more about Carrollton, learning more about what we have to offer here at West Georgia, because we're not just the only thing that brings people to Carrollton, but we're a community campus as well. And we have 46 bachelor degree programs. Again, that's thriving and growing more each year. In each semester, we've introduced new programs this semester as well. We're seeing over 8,000, close to 9,000 undergraduate students again, and more with our D1 status. Got to keep throwing that out there because we're so happy and proud. And we have about 1,800 students living on campus. We'll get the correct and accurate numbers after our census this semester. But yeah, that's West Georgia in a wrap up.
Yeah, West Georgia is one of those schools that before we're getting campus ESP, I was unfamiliar with, but such a cool regional school and great to see the growth that's happening there. So yeah, tell us more about your role and the one-stop office that you work with.
So I'm associate director at our One Stop. So the One Stop itself is located within the Momentum Center. However, our department does communication. So we see people face to face, and we also communicate and interact and assist over the phone. But within the One Stop, we have assistance with registration, financial aid, billing, transcripts. We also have our campus services partnership that just moved into our building this year, where students can get their parking passes, their Wolves IDs, get more information about the refund status for their bills, as well as meal plans and things of that nature. So we're just going to continue to build partnerships. There are individual offices that do the processing behind the scenes that are not located within the One Stop, but we are a main customer service for a majority of things outside of admissions. Happy to help with admissions. They do have their own front-facing people as well, but most interactions kind of outside of admissions start with us, and we're able to point them in the direction they need to go, or not point them a direction because they're here and we want them to be able to not have to go to too many places on campus. So
yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I know the one-stop shop trend has really been growing, I feel like over the last like decade or so. And it's great to hear just how many campus partners you all have that are a part of it, or that you all have connections with to just like continue to provide that one-stop support for students. Cool. So yeah, obviously at the Momentum Center, you also interact with families. So tell us about kind of how you interact with families there.
So during orientation, we do have like orientation season that's about 3 months during the summer, starting in May, ending. Our last one is actually going to be tomorrow. So for our people that are just coming back from vacation and trying to get on top of things before the semester starts next week. But we also do have an orientation session for the spring semester that's in December as well as in January. But during those orientation sessions, we are one of the major stops on campus. So they bring the families, the students. We see literally from our tiny tots to our grandparents that are supporting and, being there for their students. We see all of them. We're able to get them the information they need to set them up for success, whether it's financial aid, or if they're not utilizing financial aid, we tell them about the payment plans and anything that can help them be ready to go on day one.
Yeah, no, it's great to see so many students bringing a supporter of some sort to orientation, and to see them in person, I'm sure too.
Yeah.
Get some good FaceTime over the summer with those
Yes.
incoming
Yes.
families.
And we
Yeah.
get parents that kind of get acquainted with the campus. And because we're a community campus, sometimes they don't come to see their students. They just want to come and take a walk. If they live in the Carrollton area, they just take a walk on campus and they're not really here to check on the student. Obviously, they love their students. They want to check on their success. But sometimes, again, the campus is a community campus. So they just enjoy what we have to offer here as well.
I love it. Yeah, building those connections right from the start, which is great. So yeah, so one of the things obviously that we want to get into and I want to hear more about from your perspective is just why Campus ESP was a fit for UWG and what you all were looking to do with families there.
Well, firstly, because we're seeing such an influx of parents or family members, or sometimes even just best friends, being part of the collaboration and success of students, we want to be able to treat them as partners as opposed to barriers. Most of the time, parents and grandparents, especially if they're contributing to the payment of a student's degree program, they want to be able to get as much information as possible to be able to help their student, make sure their balance is paid, make sure they're moving in on campus on time. And being able to, because we know we have to follow FERPA guidelines, being able to treat them as partners and not have that barrier where we tell them, sorry, we don't have an authorization to speak on the student's account with you. Now we have an online portal where it takes literally less than 5 minutes in order to activate and authorize that connection, and we can speak to the parent without the student having to be there, especially in
Mhm.
cases where the student's in class and the parent's just trying to come and make sure that their bill is paid so they can continue to
Right.
stay in class. So that being number one as to why we decided to partner with Campus ESP. I wish I was not one of the determining people or decision makers when we chose Campus ESP, but I've loved my time here and the collaborations that we've been able to build.
Mhm.
Again, we're trying to move away from the paper FERPA where
Yeah.
we're now having to read a student's signature, and it does take a lot of time, because especially during orientation season, before we partnered with the Campus ESP, we had stacks and stacks after every orientation season. If we're doing face-to-face, we can't also process the FERPA to put in our banner systems and things of that nature in real time. So
Mhm.
days after each session, we're splitting them up by within our teams to make sure that all that information is properly inputted into the system.
Yeah.
You know, if I can't read your handwriting, I might say you live at 192 Sesame Street Drive as opposed to 123 Sesame Street Drive. So it helps us to be able to move away from the paper FERPAs, as well as obviously we're all about retention, progression, and graduation. So it
Mhm.
increased our priority level for retaining students and having that holistic perspective on like how many students are we retaining, especially with the benefit of having those connections and being able to share that information with families and parents.
Yeah, no, and I know you've been there as the implementation like happened, and really the buildup has gone on over the last few years, and so I'm sure you've seen a big change just on campus in general with kind of how parents are viewed and leveraged. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Was that kind of approach, do you think, from like your all's top leadership, was that driven more by folks like yourself who were dealing with parents more on the ground, or where did that start?
I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, obviously, we want to be as streamlined in processing as possible. And if we're taking time away from assisting the student on a day-to-day to process things like the FERPA form, we're not able to be as efficient and productive in our customer service as we want to be. So, I mean, our leadership team understood that and needed to find alternatives to fix that, as well as we're seeing again a more influx of support systems trying to be there. So it's not just the student coming to campus and doing things
Hmm.
on their own, and what better way to treat them as partners and what better way to involve them in their students enrollment life cycle than to have them be an active connection, have them be able to join online communities to get more information and share things. Like I think in one of the communities we see, they talk about dorms and they're like, what are we bringing for our dorm move in? And they get to,
Hmm.
it's not just the students that get to build a connection with one another on campus, but the parents also get to build a connection with themselves, even if it's albeit online and virtual.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. We love to hear that. So, obviously this started a few years ago. So you all have been doing a lot in that time to really utilize the system and drive parents to it. So, can you share a little bit with, what are the specific things that you're doing? And we have a couple screenshots here, but can you actually explain what these things are that you all are doing?
Yeah, of course. So with the communities, like I mentioned, it's not just for FERPA connectivity, but also we share information such as, we had a FAFSA family dinner where students, especially with the new FAFSA, I don't know who is, familiar with this new FAFSA. It's great in theory.
Yes.
So, but
One day it'll be great.
we offered different events on campus and off campus for families and students that needed a little bit one-on-one help with completing their FAFSA. So we sent those out to students as well, but we also sent them out in the communities as campaigns and as ads, promotions for the families and the students that needed that service to be able to come outside of just the regular 8 to 5, 9 to 5 to come have a meal, but also be able to get set up for success in making sure that their FAFSA is completed, asking any one of those questions to our financial aid representatives, and making sure, they're ready to go. And we do also have the campus ESP portal linked on our FERPA page. It does also give them the option to do the paper FERPA if they are not tech savvy. But our first line of communication is knowing that you get to be able to visually see what's going on with your student, and who doesn't love to be able to kind of have those type of things at their fingertips than having to call or email to ask this particular question. You get to see it in little snippets. And then we also give instructions on the webpage itself, but as well as via email or in person, whatever the case may be, when it comes to partnering and giving this information.
Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is really also happening outside the portal, which I think is great, right? So it's not the only place that they can find information. They can meet up in person, they can find information on your website, which I think is just really great. I mean, you have to kind of get the word out as much as possible to parents, right?
Yeah.
At least they do read their email a little bit better than students do, though.
Oh,
So.
yeah, most definitely. You'd be surprised the number of students within a particular time of the year where they say, I'm here because my mom told me to come. And they don't entirely know what question to ask, but they know that their mom or their dad or their grandma, what have you, saw something on the portal or saw something in one of the community posts. It's like, has your child checked their hold, or has your child, checked their emails? And they send them straight down. They're like, go and do whatever it is this email is telling me that you need to. So.
I love that, because the student probably deleted the email that they
Oh,
got.
yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, no, that's great. I love that you all are doing so many different avenues of communication and engagement with families. It's really wonderful. Obviously we're gonna show exactly what we're talking about here with this FERPA management system in a second, but one of the tools within Campus ESP that you all use is the online FERPA waiver system. That's our FERPA management module. And yeah, you all have had a lot of connections made through there, which is, how parents get access to the information. And it's had a really good response rate, right? Like really good approval rate there.
Yeah, we promote it both in the parent sessions during orientation. We promote it when they come and stop with us at the Momentum Center, or when they give us a call. Anytime we have like a parent on the phone and the students kind of, back in the corner, we're like, hey, just for future reference, in case you want to call or you want to email, you want to come up to the campus without your student being there, go ahead and start this connection. So that way, we can have those kind of conversations that your student has approved of. But many students, once the parents like, hey, who's the one paying for your degree, they're definitely willing to approve of the connections and approve of the categories the parents need to know about.
I know, yeah, Blanca, I think you and I are both of the millennial generation, so we are maybe a little less eager to share information with our parents than this current generation. So it seems a little foreign to us, and thinking just of students as becoming adults, we want them to be able to take care of all these things themselves, but the reality is just that they aren't there yet, especially this generation coming right now. I mean, 91% this summer, like, really says it all to me, because this is the generation who their freshman year of high school, if they're on the exact like age track, was COVID year. So they did not go in person to high school when they started high school. And they still heavily rely on their parents and family members for support. And I don't think that's really obviously changing anytime soon anyway. We might have a revolution of generations of Gen Alpha being some super hyper independent generation, but certainly not happening yet, right?
But the fun part is they're a whole lot more tech savvy, so utilizing all the benefits for their parents, because there are often times where it's the student helping their parents set up the account, but then their parents are the
Yes.
ones viewing the account to be able to help them, like, help them with the success and the progression and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
it's, kind of double-sided, where yes, they rely more heavily on their parents, but they're tech savvy enough to show
Mhm.
them all the things that come with the benefits of campus ESP. So I like that.
You're totally right. Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how we've responded to that, and UWG has responded to that too in a second. One thing I did want to call out, just as kind of like a high level campus ESP stat about approval rate for the FERPA module, is that UWG's numbers are really high, but they're not that far higher than our normal across like all of our platforms. So we looked over all of the data from 2023, and the approval rate there was 84%, which yeah, just goes to show that really across the board, most students, the vast majority, are eager to have their parents involved. And yeah, you mentioned this a little bit a second ago, but saying that when parents call your office, you are still trying to help them, give them directions. So talk to me a little bit about that, your all's kind of influx of calls that you get, and how you handle parents when they call for information and don't have a FERPA waiver on file yet.
Of course. So again, if they call and they don't have a FERPA waiver on file, we typically will send that because we have a ticketing system. So we log all of our interactions.
Mhm.
And if it's whether it's in person or it's via call, we tend to get most of our parents or family members calling as opposed to walking in, because obviously they're in different parts of the United States, different parts of Georgia, wherever they may be located. We get more calls about checking on their students' progress. And if they don't have a FERPA connection, either via form or via campus ESP, we send that to the student to let them know, hey, you can now initiate your connection with your parent or family member that wanted to get more information about your account. If it's general information, happy to give it. But if it's anything more specific, then we do encourage the parent, because we have instructions for both sides. So we send that information to the parent, to their personal email, to let them know this is a useful tool. Please utilize Campus ESP. Go ahead and set up your account. We do also send that information to the student to say, hey, somebody tried to get some more than general information about your account.
Right.
Here's how you can set up an active connection. So the next time that they're wanting to get that information, with your permission, we'd be
Yeah.
happy to help them.
Yeah, no, exactly. So yes, you're teasing this right now, but kind of in response to knowing how much students are, into this idea, in the last year, Campus CSP has rolled out a new tool, a new part of the product that allows students to be the one who sets that connection up. So we've called this student initiated connections, which is basically just the student going in and saying, hey, here's my parent, here's their email address, and this is the information I want to share with them. And you'll just launched this like a month ago. So it's very, very new at UWG, but so far it's definitely growing, almost 50 connections as of this morning. And when you're talking to students or hearing from students, what are you hearing about it from their perspective?
Many students come in and they're either like they have their mom on the phone on speaker and they're like, this is the question that my mom wants to know. Or even in helping in the financial aid inbox, most of
Yeah.
the time you can kind of tell if it's the parent or the students asking the questions, because
Yeah.
they will copy and paste their parents' text questions and put it in the email and like, hey, please help me answer this.
Yeah.
So it's of course, we can answer their questions, but it's also beneficial for us to not have to tell them, hey, tell your mom to do A, B, and C. We're now
Mhm.
just telling you that you can be the first point of contact for them to be able to see this type of information as well. And then, we pass that information along to say it's not just FERPA connections, but they can also be part of a community or be part of
Mhm.
several other communities. But you, as the
Yeah.
student, can initiate that. So that way you're not having to, come back and forth. 'Cause sometimes we'll get students that genuinely want no parts of the conversation about
Sure.
payment. They just want to go to class. So they hand
Right.
the phone over to us and they're like, my mom has questions. Can I go and come back? So instead of, having to say, no, you have to stay here for this conversation, we can say here, you can initiate this, this connection via campus ESP. And if your mom, dad, whoever has any questions, they can call. We can go ahead and confirm that the connection is there and we can give them the info and you can just go to class.
Mhm. Yes, no, I'm sure there's a lot of students who appreciate that because they're just some of those questions I'm sure they want to be a part of. They want to know what's going on too, but others, yeah, you're right. They just want
Just
whatever it is
just
to get
want to go to
taken
their
care
class,
of.
their English class and write their paper. So
Yes. Literally. So love it. Well, I can't wait to see how this goes for y'all. I am sure we're going to see a lot more of these come in as the semester gets started and students are visiting the one stop and hearing about this option for them. So cool. So we're gonna kind of shift gears here a little bit and dive into really the stuff that I know like I am most obsessed with is with the is the retention results from this type of thing, from using this type of system. So Campus ESP, each year since we have launched has done a study across a handful of our customers that use the FERPA management module to really dive in and look and see, is this working? Is this having an impact, right? We want to know. And it's a case study, but we do work with each of these schools, institutional research teams to really match the data between the data that we're seeing from Campus ESP and the overall school data on retention. And this past year, that study included over 12,000 students. We looked at data across 9 universities, and the average retention rate improvement that we saw was 8.3%. So that means essentially that if a student had someone in the platform that was a parent, family member, supporter who was receiving alerts on their progress, um, they had a higher likelihood of retaining from the first to second year um, than their peers, than their counterparts who did not. So West Georgia has been a partner of this study, and we're going to look like really specifically at your all data in a second. But you'll have been a partner in the study for the last 2 years at least, which is awesome. And one thing though that really I thought was cool from this past year study is that we were able to work with two of our partner institutions, Duquesne University and Auburn University, to drill in and look at some specific populations that we know really all institutions are focused on at this point to improving retention and persistence for. So particularly looking at Black families and Hispanic families, we were seeing, we were able to show that there was an even more significant retention impact if there was a connection there, which I think is so cool. I know we didn't get to drill into this data at UWG this
yeah.
past year, but maybe we will next year. But I know the state of Georgia is very focused on this as well. So yeah, I don't know, Maka, if you are did your research that you have had done dig into this at all or
Not my own personal research, but I
yeah.
know we do look at retention rates for minority and majority populations. I
Mhm.
think most of ours also have to do with first gen students
Yeah.
versus, the students that are not first generation. But to my understanding, when we do our census and reports, especially within the strategic enrollment management division, they do
Mhm.
kind of drill down for these type of numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that schools I think are trying to get more and more detailed information on so they can know, where students are needing more support. So, and speaking of first gen, the full report that we're going to email after the webinar does also break down the difference there, which is really cool. as well as students who were Pell eligible for Auburn and Duquesne, and saw an improved retention rate for both of those populations, which is super exciting to see. But kind of going back to UWG and drilling in more of your all's numbers, it's wild, but the last 2 years have been very consistent, which is like, it almost is one of those things where it's like, okay, let's double check this math. And I know we did, we triple checked it probably. But yeah, comparing retention rates between kind of the entire student body as opposed to those who have a connection in campus ESP, there was actually over 20%, over 21%, you know, higher of a rate of retention if they had a connection in the portal, which is great. So that's probably one of the big reasons too why you all are pushing it so much, right? Trying to get as many families in there as possible.
Yeah, of course. Anytime we're able to look at the communities and see the type of things that parents want to know about West Georgia, or the type of things that parents are eager for their students to be involved with, we take that type of information to better the university experience for the student and the parent and family. So yeah, if parents love it and they convince their students to love it too, we continue to build retention and build our student population.
Yeah, well, and I mean, as you know, economies shift, and I know you all are growing, but at a lot of institutions, growth is a challenge in terms of enrollment. And so every single student that you can retain just really makes a difference to the health of the institution. And you know, that's why we're here. That's why I am a part of this. Because I really believe in the power of education and the power of parents to help support that education. So yeah, we love to see these results and looking forward to the next years, but we've got to wait a couple months for those before we start digging into to how that goes for fall 24. But yeah, so those are kind of our high level retention results. We do also pull together though across each of our portals, but at the end of each year at Campus ESP, we pull the data from all of our portals to see within that FERPA management module, what things are having a retention impact and also what things are getting the most clicks. So this is just a count of clicks. This chart here shows just the total count of clicks on all the tiles across Campus ESP partners last year. And the ones with the star next to them are the ones that we know are highly correlated with retention. So things like financial aid, enrollment status, holds, of course, those sorts of things that really do impact, you know, the ability of a student to, you know, progress from one semester to the next. And then at UWG too, we were able to pull and just look last year and see which of these tiles got the most clicks there. And I love to see this alignment almost entirely with the things that have a high retention correlation being the ones that UWG parents are clicking on. I think, again, that is the kind of data that backs up that retention research we were just talking about, right? Like, obviously that makes sense. If parents are clicking the most on things about holds and things about financial aid, they are going to be better able to support their students from, you know, in terms of making those progression steps that they need to do to get from one semester to the next, which is really cool. But yeah, I don't know, Banka, anything else you want to say kind of about the retention data before we move on to the next section?
The GPA one, I mean, it's my favorite just as like personally, because I kind of regard myself as a third parent of sorts. So, because I'm the firstborn. So being able to kind of like have those conversations or, you know, relate with parents and family members. They're like, I just want to know if my child is doing what they're supposed to do, and, you know, meeting those progress markers to be able to stay in college, be able to get whichever degree that they're pursuing. And although it's not one of the starred ones, I do see it's one of the most clicked ones for us. And being able to actually see that in real life, like seeing the number of average clicks, and putting that in practicality, or like mirroring that with the number of conversations and the number of interactions that we have relating to that is just really cool for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, you didn't mention this in your intro, but you have a sibling who's at UWG, right? So you have a
I
connection.
had. So he
Yeah.
graduated last year in May, yes. And then I have a younger sibling. Unfortunately, she's not a West Georgia Wolf. She goes to Tech, but I'm still, supportive and third parenting until she's done as well.
Yeah, exactly. The oldest daughter is always going to be a part of that for sure. I feel that. I love it. Well, yes, I agree. Sometimes these ones that have higher clicks that, maybe we don't have the research to show that they have a retention impact, still can have that retention impact though, because it means that the family member, the supporter is having more meaningful conversations with their student, hopefully to really, encourage them and support them. So next up, what I really want to do is just kind of walk through the process. So I'm gonna do my best to not just talk at y'all while I do this, but I do want to give just a high level overview. And we're gonna start though by looking back at the past. So I guess technically these still exist on campus, Vanka, but you mentioned that there is a paper form that you were really trying to get people to move away from, but that was the old system, right? Was this paper form that parents filled out
Mhm.
to get
Yeah.
access, yeah, to FERPA information, which I'm sure every campus has seen a version of this form. I know we had a couple of different ones when I was at Mizzou because I worked in housing, so we had a conduct one, but then there was a different one for non-conduct things.
Mhm.
But yeah, the paper form obviously requires a lot of manual work, and can sometimes be inconsistent. So you touched on this earlier, but your team would have to like do their best with these, right? To make sure that they got entered correctly into Banner.
Yeah, yeah. So we'd have to, especially during orientation season, again, not being able to process it in real time. We have stacks of them that'll be processed either a day or days, depending on how many we had after orientation, meaning that we don't have the student right in front of us to say, like, hey, did you mean to check all educational records or did you mean to check a few? Because sometimes, like, you'll have students that check things underneath that, but they're not meaning all, they're just meaning those particular things. So it's just,
Right.
the like the feedback loop of like, did you mean to do this? Now I have to reach back out to you and wait for this before I can actually process it. And in the meantime,
Mhm.
your parent or family member could be calling, trying to get the information that they believe has already been authorized, but technically has not been because we still need additional information to process it. So
Right.
being able to be with Campus ESV has come back on that a lot. And then there's also, because it's the students' information that they're authorizing, it's the student that has to submit that form. So
Mhm.
oftentimes we'll get parents, because it's available on our website. We'll get parents that submit it on behalf of their student, and we'll have to send them the, hey, love the proactiveness. However, it does need to be submitted by your student,
Yeah.
and because of that, we don't necessarily always include the student in that email chain or whatever the case may be. We have to do a separate interaction with the student, which does get lost in translation if it's a different person that's doing that processing on Monday than it is that's doing it on Wednesday. So there's a lot of manual back and forth and mental labor that comes with having to do the forms.
Oh, yes, no, I'm sure. So yes, now you all are pushing them to Campus ESP to join the platform to get the communication. And luckily what that means too is that it's automatically gonna remind them of this other option. So right when they join, they see messages. These are all of these messages that I'm going to show here have been built kind of in collaboration with the UWG team. The Campus ESP team has, kind of a system in place to create drafts and best practices that we know will remind parents. But we start out with really like just initially making sure they know, hey, you can get access to this information. Click here, walk through the steps. We also send them targeted emails about it. So in Campus ESP lingo, we call these announcements where we really send out a little message that walks through exactly what they need to do to get access to that information. And then because they're also going to get just informational newsletters from the system, we include reminder nudges in there as well. So if they haven't done that process yet, they will see in their newsletter every other week, hey, don't forget if you want to do this. We try to just remind them as often as possible, because again, we know the retention impact this can have, and we know that parents and family members really are looking for this information. So try to drive them in as many ways as possible. Overload with
I
information.
get those reminder nudges because I
Yeah.
was on my brother's, like I was an active connection for him.
Yeah.
So I still get those.
Yeah.
That way I can use them as examples for parents, like, hey, this is the type of stuff that you're gonna get. And feel free to remind your student to come and check on their holds.
Yes. No, yeah. So that's the email nudge once they are connected, which is awesome. One thing I know you all have also done is really working to just decrease the number of paper forms that you get, period. Yeah, you shared this with us ahead of time, which is so cool. You've actually seen like a significant decrease in those paper forms since last year. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Because we're able to firstly during orientation, it's
Mhm.
pushed in the parent sessions. It's said during our face-to-face interactions. It's said during the online orientation sessions for those that can't come to campus. And then anytime we do get a paper FERPA that just finds its way into our inbox, we go ahead and let students or parents know that campus ESP is a better option for them to utilize. And most times we do get students that are like, all right, gone ahead and done the connection, don't need to do the paper FERPA, and we can just archive that email and move on.
Amazing. We love to be able to archive an email. So what the process looks like for parents is kind of what I want to step through next. So these are some screenshots with obviously some some fake students here. But the first step is that the family member will log into the portal and go through the process of requesting access to their student. So really the only information that they need is the student email address, which is very good. They don't need to know like student ID number or anything complicated that they might need to look up. Hopefully email address is pretty straightforward. We then ask for a little bit of information on themselves. And we like to show them kind of what their profile looks like, so that if if they haven't added a photo or their email address like is their name, they can fill in that information so the student really knows it's a legitimate request. But they go through and actually look at the different types of information that would be available to them in the system, and they can make individual selections of what information they want to see, or they can also request access to all of it. So it's this very user-friendly system where they just click a checkbox, and it's very clear like what they have requested access to and what they have not. Very, very easy system to use. They can probably make this, connection. I think you said earlier, like 5 minutes, they could go through this process. It's very, very easy. The other thing I'll just call out here is that this list of information is also customizable by the institution. So this is what UWG has on their form, but each of our FERPA module users has a slightly different list and different ways of sharing information as well. And then at the end of like selecting what they want, then they press this little button that says connect to your student. And what that does is it triggers an email to the student. So obviously this is all very important that this is officially FERPA approved. We want the student to understand what they're granting access to. So they get a message saying, hey, your family member has requested this access. And they have to go into the system and kind of follow a similar process. So they log in using their single sign-on, so they don't have to like set up a new password or anything like that, and choose which things they want to approve. So again, here they can choose individual items, or they can just say, yep, I'm good with, that person, that family member having access to everything. Also importantly here is that they can come back in at any time to update this. So I'm sure everyone who, works in this field knows that, especially during orientation, maybe the lead up to the first year, there's a lot of pressure for students to share everything with their parents, but as they go on, they might want to change that. They might grow in their independence. They might say, hey, I've kind of got this under control now, or honestly, more likely is they might have a semester where they have some bad grades and they don't want mom or dad to see. So they might go in and temporarily adjust this, and that's okay. I mean, that's obviously their right. We want this to be within their control to adjust. So yeah, I'm sure students do that over time, but for the most part, we see students, as we shared earlier, really granting approval to all of this different information. Um, so yeah, so then once that happens, then the parent will get email updates when there is information available for them to view and when that information changes. So based on which, sections that the student granted. So in this example here, you can see account balance information, financial aid information. The parent gets emails saying, hey, there's new information. You can log in to check the what that is in the system. Again, trying to just maintain full like FERPA compliance here. They have to log in, prove who they are, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's really cool. Honestly, these email notifications to me are one of the biggest differences between even the student experience in some cases and this system, because students do get a lot of emails from the institution about their profile and about what's going on behind the scenes for their account, but sometimes it's more on a semesterly basis. It's not necessarily like every time something updates, and so this is even a little bit more immediate, which can have obviously a more immediate impact. So when they get these emails, then they click in and they have this dashboard. So this kind of thing that you can see coming down over the top of the portal view here is what we call a dashboard. And each of these different tiles correlates to those different areas of information that the student has granted access to. And it has a summary data piece here at the top. So, it would say like 3 holds or $20 due on the account balance. But by clicking on the tile, the parent or family member also gets even more detailed information and the ability to also see some instructions with what to do with this information. So Maka, I'm sure your team really appreciates this, but because you all are dealing with some of these issues, just like bills not being paid, right? So yeah, what kind of impact have you all seen from having this information directly sent to parents?
I mean, it's made a very great impact because we get students less and less that will ask questions like, well, what is my balance? Especially when the parents are able to see the balance. And if it's a contributor towards the student's payments, then they're already able to see it. And then it also gives instructions, like you mentioned, on how to make that payment. And then for like an additional feature on the West Georgia end, we do also have authorized users. So it kind of creates that, that line between, yes,
Right.
you're the parent, so I don't have to give you my username and my password for you to make the payment. You have
Right.
Campus ESP to see the things, and then I can make you an authorized payment user, so you can go ahead and make those payments for me.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of those type of inquiries, and I think it's very helpful to be able to promote both Campus ESP and the things that we do on the West Georgia's end to make parents and family members partners, but to also give that autonomy to the student.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really want to give information that's going to be helpful and useful in the moment to both parties. So another just quick example that I think is super helpful is holds and the ability to share more details, because holds are one of those things that regardless of whether you're first generation or not, they're complicated. Sometimes they have weird codes like FP, AT. A parent doesn't know what that means. So being able to share, exactly what it is and what the next steps are, I think is critical. And you mentioned earlier, you've had students come in and be like, hey, my parent said I needed to come in here. So you think this is kind of where that's coming from?
Yes, and I think this part's also really helpful because for most students' views, they just see that they have a hold and they don't necessarily drill down to see what the hold information is on
Right.
where the parents can see it, so they know exactly where to go. And because we
Mhm.
are a one stop, we do have students that will immediately come and they're like, well, I have a hold please help me fix this. And it may not be our team that processes that hold
Right.
specifically, but we can point them in the direction or get in contact on our end with the team that will be able to help them with that hold. But I mean, we see more and more that parents having this information at their fingertips, they're able to reach out to the particular team that needs to address that hold to get that done.
Yeah, no, obviously helpful, and we love to hear it. Cool. So, and then kind of the last end of this process is the folks who work on campus, right? What can they see? How can they deal with it when a parent is on the phone with them? So within Campus ESP as well, when a faculty or staff member gets a call, they can log in as well with their admin SSO. They don't need a separate login ID or anything. And look up that parent. If there's a PIN in place, they can validate the identity with a PIN, and then see, okay, this is what they have been granted information to speak about. And, I can go ahead and, have that conversation with them or not, depending on what they see here, which is really helpful. But also, I just want to note that, we know that at a lot of schools, Banner or whatever SIS that you're using is going to continue to be the official system for tracking this. So at UWG, you all push these waivers from Campus CSP back into Banner, right?
Yeah.
Folks
So
can
that's processed on a nightly basis,
Yeah.
thankfully. So we're able to see, and the great part about having both is that if it was recently done, like let's say you just did it for your student today, we can use single sign-on to go and confirm that. But if it's been days, then we can definitely just utilize Banner because that's what we're going to be using to get the information needed for the
Right.
student. Anyway, we can go ahead and just look at that on the necessary screen.
Right, exactly. Because yeah, one thing I kind of brushed over, but the view here for admins in Campus ESP doesn't actually have the details there. It just has what types of information has been approved. So as you're mentioning, like in Banner, then they can click around and actually see the information that they're trying to get access to. So yeah, super helpful. I was never a Banner user myself, but obviously I was in the SIS a lot when parents were calling. So it's really great to just be able to have this, because I think I used to have to validate by the most random things sometimes. It was never quite clear in my system that I was using. So this is really helpful, really clear to have this back in Banner. So kind of last thing we want to talk about is just a little bit more of how you have built buy-in on campus and really made sure everyone knows, how to use this system. So first, tell us a little bit about what you've done with campus partners.
So with all of our campus partners, like you mentioned, any faculty, staff, and even student and employee can utilize the single sign-on to be able to confirm what the student has as an active connection, or if the student has an active connection first and foremost, and then the categories that they've approved to be spoken about. And with that, we were able to create snipping tools and documentation to be able to walk one-stop employees through that easy process. And it is quite easy.
Yeah.
We created documentation with snipping tools and screenshots to be able to kind of understand what it looks like, how to access the single sign-on piece, how to access the admin pieces. And then with that information, we've also put it on our legal affairs website to be able to easily access it without having to, go to Microsoft or go to Google Drive, whatever the case may be.
Yes.
Because our institution is converting from Google Suites to Microsoft.
Oh no.
That's been fun. So being able to already have that as on the website where
Yeah.
the migration or the transition is not affected, it's really
Yeah.
great because you can just quite literally Google for UWG and it's one of the first websites that pop up.
I
So
love that.
that's been really great. And I am the official trainer for our department. So any new hire that we have goes through me to be able to understand the FERPA guidelines first and foremost, and then how to utilize Campus ESP and our banner system to confirm an active connection and to also confirm the categories that have been approved or denied, to, better be able to assist students and parents and families either face to face or over the phone. And thankfully, we don't utilize the PIN function for
Oh,
Campus ESP. So that's been really great because we have noticed with those that are utilizing the paper FERPA, which is less, again, thankfully, but
yeah.
those that utilize the paper FERPA have a 4-digit PIN, and it's very easy to forget a 4-digit PIN that you
Oh my
created
gosh.
your freshman year,
Yeah,
especially if
of
you
course.
didn't create it with your parent, or your parent can forget it too if you're not often calling or often using that 4-digit PIN. I myself forget my own, debit card PIN, so I can understand it'd be easy to forget a 4-digit PIN for something like the FERPA. So, thankfully we don't have to confirm that. As long as they have the active connection, we confirm who we're speaking to and the categories in which we're allowed to speak on. And again, we promote it heavily
Yeah.
during the art orientation sessions. We send it to new students, especially new students and parents and family members when they come to campus. It's been really great in my opinion, because most of the times after the parent sessions, you can already kind of tell the parents that have been proactive and they come to the desk with their student and they're like, I already have the active connection. I already have it approved. Or you kind of see the back and forth between the student and the parent at the front desk where it's like, I know you approved this and I saw that you denied this, so we'll talk about it later on the things that we're gonna change. From what I see, a majority of the time, it's disciplinary records that people don't approve for some
Of course.
odd reason. But yeah, it's really helpful to be able to just either give them, like the QR code that you see here, will give it to the parent if it's just the parent there without their student. And then we have the student version where we'll give it to the student and it takes them straight to the campus ESP UWG side, for them to single sign on and do the things they need to.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, you guys have done a lot and it's really great to see. I just want to cover a couple final like high level stats here. First of all, some numbers that you shared with us, which is just how many folks you have using the system, almost 200 faculty and staff members, and based on how much time they previously spent looking up the paper forms, we know that has saved a lot of time for them to be able to have this all handy digitally, which is really great. We know everyone's trying to do more with less these days, so that's really great. And yeah, that's common. That's very similar to what we see across all campus ESP customers too, that it's helping them save time, reduce the number of calls. And then just very high level, you all have been live for 3 years now. There's almost 3,100 FERPA connections in the system, and over 25,000 clicks just in the last year on those different tiles. And so, that's people who didn't have to call. That's parents who were able to, figure it out themselves and help their student directly, which we love to see. So yeah, so wrapping up, you want to kind of talk a little bit more about these takeaways for what strategies really worked for you at UWG?
Well, at least our one stop is the first point of contact for a lot of things. It has been able to help us foster those partnerships, because we're either using those as training initiatives for, it's mostly faculty because they don't have the same access in our banner systems as staff do as admins. So we're able to, partner with faculty members to be able to say, hey, if a parent's reaching out about grades, here's how you can view this information using Campus ESP single sign-on, or here's how we can create better support systems within the faculty side. So, the class side, and the financial aid billing and other things, bring them together. And then again, consistent communication reminders
Yeah.
for parents, which always improves student success, because when parents are seeing that a balance is due, they're asking their students, do you know that you have a balance? Have you been receiving these communications that they may not necessarily receive on the student's end? And then with the student initiated FERPA waivers, we don't have to have the student send that info back to their parent, because things get lost in translation, and it's very much understandable. But instead of having to say, hey, send this picture or send these instructions to your parent to create the connection, you can, while you're in here with us, create the connection and they can go ahead and look at the things so that like both, they're understanding it from both ends, both the parent and the student end.
Yeah.
And then Campus ESP with the communities and the reminders and the emails and the nudges that they have, it's a centralized information hub. Like there are bits and pieces that I'm still learning about it, but I'm learning that the comments that parents share on our communities help us, you know, be able to make better strategic decisions for the campus, but it also shares things that some students and parents may not know that is available to them. Like I've heard that somebody had an apartment off campus that they utilize and they put in the community chat and they're like, hey, we're renting rooms and like things like that that may not necessarily be easily shared if this tool wasn't here at West Georgia.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. And your insight has been so great. I know we are right at time, but if anyone does have questions, you can drop those in the chat. I don't think we've gotten any so far that I have seen anyway. So but of course, if people do have follow-up questions, need to, learn more, we have a lot of different resources. Again, all on our website, campusesp.com. There's a contact form there in particular. So if you have questions and just want to hear more, I'm sure, we can help, but also we're both available as well. So Banka and I are both very, very willing to answer questions, share more information. So again, this deck and recording will be shared out as well. So yeah, I don't think there are any questions. So thank you so much for your insight and for being with us today. And yeah, hope everyone has a great rest of your Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye.